Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're so glad you can join us today. I'm Trisha Houston with KS&R, and we also have
Hi, I'm Allison Owens with KS&R.
excellent. We are excited to have you join us today. This is a little bit of a different webinar. In this series, we call it the Experience Lab. We are the discovery and design team here at KS&R. It's an interactive experience. So, as you saw on the welcome screen, hope you were able to grab some Legos from around the house or even Duplos. And guess what? They all go together. So, either is fine. But our goal today is simple to show you how hands-on thinking can really unlock deeper insights, get stronger alignment amongst your teams, either cross-functional or project teams, and ultimately build better business outcomes. So by the end of our session, our goal is to have you have a better understanding of the Lego Serious Play methodology, which is why you're here. But before we start, we would be remiss to not mention that while we're focusing exclusively basically on Lego Serious Play today, it's just one of the tools in our toolkit for doing workshops. So at Discovery and Design here at KS&R, we take an activation first approach, either helping clients before projects or after projects really integrate results, integrate the insights that they find, and put them into action in their organization. And Lego Serious Play is just one of those tools that we use. So excited to share with you today. So let me get started. Um, so when we think about Lego Serious Play, we're like, oh, it's just playing with Legos. And honestly, that was the reaction I kind of had when I first heard about it. I'm like, I have to get certified, which is true. So we have 6 certified Lego Serious Play facilitators here at KS&R. And what that means is we are trained in how to apply this methodology to your business problems. Certain facilitation techniques, but mostly how to really design the activities. Outside of work, I am an avid journaler, and if you happen to be at South by Southwest next week, I'm actually giving a journaling workshop. Speaking of, different types of activities we do. And day to day, I lead our discovery and design practice, which focuses on all things experience design, service design, and CX. And I'm joined by Allison.
Hi there, I'm Allison Owens. I'm a senior experience designer and insights manager at KS&R. I've got over 11 years of experience in market research. I'm a quali, right? So qualitative research is my favorite methodology. I'm a Reva trained moderator and obviously a certified Lego Serious Play facilitator. And a big part of my work really focuses on helping teams kind of discover insights, work through challenges, whether that's around customer experience, innovation, or strategy. So when Trisha first introduced Lego Serious Play to our group, the idea that we could become certified in this, I was intrigued by the fact that building could help surface ideas and perspectives that don't always come out of traditional discussion. It's a super creative tool that can be applied in many different ways. But so since then, I've had the chance to facilitate sessions with teams and kind of see firsthand how powerful that shift could be. And we're excited to give you a small taste of that experience today. So we've got a quote here about play and the importance of play. I'll let you all read that. But in other words, we feel like play is one of the ways we learn and explore new ideas. So obviously in business settings, we are relying heavily on discussion and analysis. But we find that when people build and kind of experiment with ideas in a more hands-on way, it can unlock different kinds of thinking. And that's exactly what Lego Series Play is designed to do. It's bring play into business context.
So, why does this conversation matter? So, when I think about business challenges in, the era that we're in, I mean, things just continue to get more complex. I mean, that's just the reality of development, innovation, and things like that, and more interconnected. So that means cross-functional conversations are more and more important. And I'm sure we've all been in those rooms when you bring a bunch of teams together and it's crickets, right? So the reality is creating collaboration is harder than it used to be, especially since we're remote, hybrid, maybe on a return to office plan. So you've got all those things kind of that we're facing as a reality of our job. So thinking about collaboration differently is one of the reasons why we found a lot of power in this. And as we've been kind of testing it out, using it over the past year, our team got certified last April, so April 2025, to be able to bring this to other teams. That's the power that we've also seen. I mean, the innovation ideas are wonderful, the team building is wonderful, but the fact that we get people in a room who aren't normally in a room together and they're laughing and they're smiling and just kind of lighting up, even folks from the C-suite, it's kind of magical, honestly, the power of play.
One of the reasons that we use Lego Serious Play is to kind of get meetings a little bit more focused, right? Or collaborative. So I'd like you to think about what typically happens in a meeting, right? So especially the last time you've walked out of a meeting and felt like maybe it wasn't the best use of time. I know we have all unfortunately been there. But in the chat, if you could, this is where we want us to start interacting together. Tell us what happened, right? When a meeting wasn't the best use of your time, what happened that day, what was going on, some conversation thought starters. Maybe the conversation circled, maybe a decision was not made. I know I've been in a couple of meetings where we're just circling, and we're never getting to the point. Or maybe you noticed, oh, everyone was on their laptop. Absolutely. People are not engaged. Maybe you noticed somebody stole all the airtime, right? There was not equal airtime. You didn't maybe hear from all of the people. And maybe the opposite of the conversation circling, right? Maybe the group aligned too quickly, but you weren't fully convinced that everybody was actually on board. Over time, in these meetings, we've noticed some consistent patterns that show up in these situations, right? Discussion tends to move sequentially. Once the first few ideas land, the room starts shaping around them, right? We've got the group think that can come into play. And participation we've seen tends to really mirror personality and hierarchy. So you might see some of the leaders in the room talking more than some of the more junior staff members. And the structure of conversation often pushes the group towards agreement before everyone has fully formed their thinking. So instead of asking, how do we run better meetings, Lego Serious Play kind of asks a different question. Essentially, what if the issue isn't the people, but the format? And what if we changed that medium? With our experience with Lego Serious Play, we did find that when you change the medium, you change the behavior in the room. We kind of have observed that conversation unfolds in sequence, one voice at a time. We'll get into this a little bit later about the sharing of Lego Serious Play, but the methodology forces everybody in the room to have a voice. Building with Lego Serious Play happens in parallel. Everyone has time to think individually, and instead of at the same time. And then they're not necessarily reacting to the first idea that lands, but each person is really developing their own point of view before hearing others' points of view. So we think that, that's super helpful in terms of brainstorming and collaboration. And once these perspectives are kind of externalized and physically visible, the conversation can shift. And that really comes down to the how we share our thoughts and our builds. We'll definitely get into that and you'll experience that firsthand. But we found that when you change the medium, you're not really debating opinions, but you're examining models. So differences aren't really interruptions, but they're more of information and alignment becomes something the group constructs together. Um, and so this is kind of the structural shift that the Lego Serious Play method is built on.
Great. Thanks, Allison. Um, so thinking about why Lego Serious Play was ever considered here at KS&R. So we've talked, about this, that it's a structured way to explore real business challenges. The reason we ever even found it was when I first started leading the discovery and design team, I went around to our different industry teams. We have folks here at KS&R focused on technology or healthcare or retail with deep expertise, right, in all these areas. And asking what are the gaps, what are you not able to do today that you wish you could do better, right, for your clients. And a consistent refrain was, I'd like to go deeper with business to business audiences. And B2B audiences are a big part. It's really part of KS&R's origin story and history, so it's a big part of our DNA. So thinking about how we can go deeper with that group was the impetus to actually finding this, which seems counterintuitive, right? Okay, we want to go deeper with business to business audiences. Let's bring in play. But that's the beauty of it, in that it is that disruptive kind of format that can bring new ideas to the surface. So I'm going to skip. We've talked about most of this in terms of like the general idea of what Lego Serious Play is, and let Allison shift over to tell us a little bit about why it's different.
Yes, so there is a cognitive reason that this works. When we build, we're engaging more than just verbal reasoning. We're using spatial thinking, pattern recognition, emotion, and logic at the same time. It also changes pace. So building introduces just enough friction to prevent quick surface level agreement, but it gives people the space to form thinking before reacting to others. And that's where we found like the power really lies, right? When an idea is in the model instead of in the person, it becomes easier to explore, easier to question, and easier to refine. So that shift can increase both safety and depth. Safety to share ideas, safety to, explore outside of the norms and to really innovate. There's a fun statistic that we like to talk about. When you build with your hands, you actually unlock 80% more of your brain than just verbalizing your thoughts alone. So when I first heard that, I was like, could that really be true? But I do feel after facilitating these sessions and experiencing others that it's definitely true.
Absolutely. And this idea of giving other folks a voice, when we first got trained and certified back in April, we bring all employees for KS&R together twice a year and work together weeks. And so we took the opportunity last May to run our entire company through a short exercise similar to what you all will do today, virtually, but we were in person. And I had several people come up to me afterwards and say, thank you for giving me a comfortable way to participate, because our prompts during that were about personal development and team building and things that way. And just the thanks they had, that they felt they found a voice they didn't usually have in maybe a Teams call or a Zoom call. So we've mentioned a couple of different ways that this can work. So we mentioned virtual. We're obviously virtual today, which is possible. We do virtual sessions for Lego Serious Play, but there are a lot of benefits of being together in person. And there's no one single way to do Lego Serious Play sessions, but I'll let Allison talk through some of the typical rules of thumb of how we like to think about designing a session.
Yes. So, like Trisha mentioned, I think one of the best things about this method is the flexibility. Each session, we really design to the number of participants that you may have and the business questions you're looking to answer. But there are a couple ground rules we like to kind of build that off of, right? So, we look for a 1 to 5 ratio of facilitators to participants, ideally. We like to say that typically we're looking for a full day. A half day is definitely doable, and multiple days are generally common. Trisha alluded to this before, but everybody participates. We say clear your desk. There should be no laptops, no phones unless you're on a break. And everybody does have a chance to share. So the spotlight will be on them at some point. Every time we do this, we start with a warm-up build to get people comfortable, expressing creativity with their hands, feeling the bricks tangibly, and then we move on to build related to the business objectives. But the warm-up is something that gets everybody comfortable, gets everybody on a similar playing field, something we always include. And like I mentioned, this is a super flexible methodology. So it could be individual builds. So when people are working on their own builds, or we can do team builds where everybody works on builds and then they iterate on how those things tend to fit together. So that's how we typically run a workshop with just those ground rules.
Yep, that's great. And so we're going to try it now, but we will come back to at the end talk about some of the applications, right? So your wheels might be turning. You're like, how does this apply to my business? How can I use it? So we will come back to that, but do think about it, as you're doing our next exercise, how it might apply to your business.
Yes. So since we're in a webinar format, the way we share insights will look a little different today. We'll talk through, I guess, the typical way we would share, but the building activities and overall structure are similar to what you'd experience in a full Lego Serious Play session. Just to give you a sense of how the method works, we are going to start with a quick warm-up build. Like I mentioned, this is something we do in every session because it helps get people comfortable thinking with their hands before we move into more complex topics. So Trisha's going to show us the ground rules slide here. And this is what we kick every Lego Serious Play session off with. These are the rules that kind of set the tone. Um, Obviously, I mentioned no electronics. We want everybody to participate. Stay in flow. This is something that is specific to Lego Serious Play, right? So we want people to constantly be building, touching, working with the bricks and staying within the task. So stay in flow is essentially stay focused, stay in task. So we've got another one here that's that have hard fun. It's the second to the last on the right. And this is one thing that really stuck with me when I first experienced Lego Serious Play was the idea of hard fun. I remember being in my training and thinking, this is actually harder than I expected. Not physically, obviously, but mentally, because you are asked to take something abstract, like an idea or a challenge, or maybe your own perspective, and kind of translate it into a real, tangible model. And then you have to explain what it represents and why. So, obviously, at first, it can feel a little bit uncomfortable because you're used to explaining with ideas, ideas with words, not necessarily objects. But once you get into it, I feel that something shifts, right? You start thinking differently. You notice patterns in what you're building, maybe the choices you've made, and what others are building. So that's where the hard fun comes in. I really do think it's engaging and hands-on, but it does require real thought and reflection. So that's why this is more than play, more than just fun. This is hard fun. But by the end of the exercise, you realize you've uncovered insights you maybe wouldn't have through traditional discussion alone. Another one that stood out to me here is trust the process, right? When we first mention Lego in a business setting, we've gotten a lot of different reactions, such as, "What do you mean? How do you use Lego to make better business decisions?" So we ask that you, while you're going through this today, really trust the process, trust us, and really go all in on this with us. A couple other kind of ground rules we tend to impart is to obviously listen generously. You don't judge people based on their skill level, but encourage questions as well. So these are just the basic ground rules that will apply today and in all others.
Excellent. Yeah, we Jamal and Teddy, who are two of our team members who are on that first slide who were certified, they were just certified in the past few weeks and they came back from their 3-day training and were just drained. They were like, it's a lot to get your head around if you're doing a multi-day. So all right. So let's dig in. Allison, are we ready to kick off our activity?
Yes, I am. I've got my timer all ready.
Excellent.
All right. So what we're going to do is obviously experience this method directly. So, like I mentioned, this is the exact warm up that we'll use in live sessions to establish the rhythm of the build first, talk second methodology. So, what you're going to do is grab your bricks, choose your base plate. So, that's the flat piece that you will build on. Yes, Trisha is modeling it. Thank you very much. And if you don't have a base plate, any like flat piece really works. So, in a moment, I'm just going to start a timer for 3 minutes. You will build silently. And I ask that you try to keep building the entire time. Don't really step back and evaluate. Don't plan it out. Just make a decision and keep going. We like to say, let your hands do the building versus your brain. So the prompt for this one is we'd like you to build a tower, any type of tower. There's no right tower. There's only your tower. And then when time is up, we'll pause and reflect on what just happened in your thinking. So I'm going to go ahead and start the timer. We'll start some background music so you are not building in silence. The time starts now, and the music should be starting momentarily. There it goes. We have just hit the minute mark. You've got about 2 minutes left. About 30 seconds left. All right. Time is up. So I'll have you take your hands off your bricks, take your hands off your build, and we're going to do a little bit of reflection now. So I'll have you take a moment and look at what you built. I obviously don't want you to improve on it or adjust it. I just want you to observe it. So then we're going to talk about what happened. So this is the typical format, right? We build and then we talk about what we've built. So we'll go into our reflection now. Reflect on your build. So if we could go to the next slide, please.
Yep. Sorry, I had to
No
swap
worries.
the swap the screen share back. Got it.
Great, thank you. So we've got some questions on the screen, right? So some things I'd like you to consider. And these are some things we can think through, and you can throw your answers in the chat. I'm going to prompt Trisha as if this were a real session and she was in front of me here. So, Trisha, talk to me a little bit about what guided your decisions during your build today. What are the things you prioritized?
Sure. So I had a bucket of bricks here. I just grabbed my base plate and started building. So this is what I ended up with. I actually started with some Duplos at the bottom, which do click into the Legos, by the way, the Duplos, because I wanted a tall tower and I wanted it to be sturdy. So
Mhm.
that's why I was thinking of adding those. Um, I also, to me, if it's a tower, it should be visible, because you might need line of sight. I don't know, airplanes, things like that, right? So I put these kind of clear bricks up top, which could be like lights, and a short ladder so my person could get to the top. But the thought was that they're up top and have their tool, and are kind of, at what, like a watchtower, like kind of looking out. So that's what I was thinking about when I built my tower.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, you included your minifigure. Is your minifigure there to represent anything, or is your minifigure doing anything in your build today?
I guess when I put it there, I didn't really think of it like, I don't think it's me. Like I
Hmm.
just put them there. I had this tool. This is a shovel. I don't know how well you can see that, but to me it was like if you're going to be in the tower, you need to be at the highest point to be able to see something. So that's why I put them up top.
Sure, sure. Okay. Well, checking through the chat here. Someone said they wanted their tower to have some symmetry, but had to shift quickly since you didn't have any equal number of colored pieces. I am similar to you. I like everything to be symmetrical and colorful in the same way. So, heard a challenge. Anything else in the chat in terms of what made your tower unique, or what drove your thinking as you were creating the tower?
Yeah, I feel like, and I mean, I know I'm curious what people say in the chat, but I feel like when we're in sessions, you commonly get, I needed to build the tallest tower, or I had to use all my bricks, things like that. It doesn't have to be, at least to start in these warm-up builds, it's usually more functional
Mhm.
and tactical, the types of things that we might hear or that you might be thinking. So,
Absolutely. So in this, right, you were given a simple prompt. It was to build a tower. We did not give you any constraints beyond time, but you made dozens of decisions almost instantly. Obviously, you chose where to start, whether to build for height, like Trisha, or stability, whether symmetry mattered. You chose whether to experiment or commit. And none of these choices were random, right? They reflect how you interpret open-ended problems. So some of you may be optimized, for color patterns, or maybe you assigned a task or a job to your minifigure. So you didn't really overthink before placing the first brick, and that's an insight, right? We did not ask you a single survey question, but you maybe assigned meaning to these pieces, and that's really what happens in a full Lego series play session. People externalize their thinking before they filter it through a conversation, and the model can often become a mirror. When participants explain their build, like Trisha did, you could hear them articulate patterns and they maybe weren't consciously aware of, right? How they approach risk, how they structure ambiguity, how they define success. And that's really where we find the insight emerges. Not necessarily because the bricks are magical, but because building bypasses over intellectualizing and surfaces how we actually think. So, if you could imagine that, applying that to how we define innovation, how we see our customer, how we interpret strategy, how we understand team dynamics, the diversity that showed up in your towers is the same diversity that shows up in business decisions. And this helps us see it clearer. So the next thing we're going to do is going to build, no pun intended, on our builds. So this is kind of the next step that we might take it in one of these workshops is to modify your build based on this next prompt. So what I'm going to have you do is not break down your build in any way, but I will have you modify your tower. So the prompt is modify your tower. So it represents what you most enjoy about your work. So you could add something, maybe remove a piece or two, don't change the overall structure or shift something. I want you to make a change that actually reflects what energizes you. And so the ground rules to this one is again, you must use your base plate. Please try to include, if you have them, a minifigure or the little people. And don't deconstruct if possible, just add on or make small changes. And for this one, we will give you 3 minutes to do that as well. So we'll start the music so you can modify your tower to represent what you enjoy about your job. We could start the music, please. 25 more seconds. Alrighty, time is up. I'll have you take your hands off the bricks, hands off your builds. So next thing we will do is we're going to reflect on the modifications and the changes that we made. So got some prompts on the screen. Think through these things, right? What did you change? What's the most important modification you made? Throw your thoughts in the chat if you have them. Think through kind of how the meaning or the purpose of your tower changed. Where did you place your minifigure and why? And how does the minifigure feel about the changes? So, Trisha, talk to me a little bit about the changes that you made to your tower.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll hold it up here so you can at least kind of see some of it. But the main changes I made in the first build, I had like a little small ladder, which wasn't super functional. It was very hard to get to the top. So one thing I love about my role and love about my job is helping folks develop and get new skills and kind of just progress along in their professional development. So I am now the minifigure, and I'm down here at the bottom, and I'm holding a rope that they can climb up on. If I had a ladder, I probably would have used that because the rope is a little dangerous. But climb up the rope, and I made kind of like steps, and I left my tool up top so
Hmm.
that, somebody else can go up top and kind of man the watchtower, if you will. And my role is really about helping people elevate and climb that ladder.
Hmm. So it sounds like you put yourself in the build when you didn't intentionally do that in the prior build.
Correct. Yeah. And it was like when I think about it, when you give a prompt that's much more, like personal, when it's reflection, it's like that's a way to kind of, to me, bring in kind of more emotion and kind of how I feel about it because it's easier for me to tell you about my minifigure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So it sounds like, when you shifted the structure, it sounds like you added it, made it a little more sturdy, a little more functional. You weren't just decorating, right? You were signaling what matters to you. And that signal is really where the insights come from. So, when we talk about roles in business, we talk about tasks and deliverables. We don't always talk about what energizes us or what we naturally gravitate towards. But those drivers really influence how we collaborate and how we innovate and ultimately make decisions. So, in a full session where participants share these builds, we'll start to see patterns emerge. You can see clusters of strengths where motivations align, where they differ, what the team values collectively, and where they may be tension. And that's incredibly useful because we notice that strategy and innovation, they don't happen in a vacuum. They happen through people. And understanding what drives people can change how the work gets done. So imagine applying the same structure to understanding your customer or answering difficult business decisions or iterating on an idea or product or service. When we ask teams to build what their customer values or what trust looks like, or even what future experiences should be like, the insights often go deeper than what comes out in a standard discussion. We find that that's not necessarily because people don't know the answers, but building helps them access and express them differently. So you've experienced two warm-ups, two builds. Trisha's going to go into how we might apply this to real life business decisions.
Yeah. So when we think about how this comes to life, we mentioned it's usually integrated into other workshop activities, not all Lego all day. But there's different ways versus what we just did, was a simple version of the method. That was really an individual build that share out around the table, a la, focus group style, right? So very kind of traditional qualitative. It doesn't necessarily have to stay that way in terms of an individual build. You can even have different ways. You can iterate like we did. We did that actually here. So aligning the group around a specific goal, but even swap builds to where you have to take what somebody else has created and either interpret their meaning or add an additional layer of meaning on top of that build, which really can force your brain to kind of think in different ways because you're trying to interpret someone else's, hand thoughts, not just their verbal thoughts, right? What they actually created. And lastly, one that really works great in terms, I've seen it obviously work wonderful for team building, but even in process building is the idea of a landscape build. And so what that means, I was trying to look at those pictures. We don't have a picture of it, but basically, like if we had a whole bunch of individual builds, we would then put them together in a landscape, right? In relation to each other in a way that told a story. So you're creating a narrative, you're creating a process, you're creating a longer story of how these different builds connect together versus just focusing on the individual builds and iterating them. And so as we showed here at the bottom, I mean, there's different types of, business impacts that these are good for, but it's really about picking the right tool out of the activation toolkit to meet the business objectives. Because ideating or iterating for the sake of doing it isn't very helpful. It's really about making sure that you can drive action or whatever outcomes you need. So as we've mentioned earlier, these are just some actual pictures from actual builds, some of the KS&R folks, and some of us from training, but these can be done in person, hybrid. And so a hybrid's interesting because while there's a couple of different ways hybrid could come together, but we have actually done a virtual session, but we actually mailed kits out to folks so that everybody had the same material. So today, with this being a webinar, that's why we're like, bring your own materials, just kind of see. But we have actual, these are either the small kits that we have from Lego, or there's even kind of like bigger boxes, right? So these are boxes you can get that we actually provide as part of this session. So everybody's working from a level playing field. And we also have a huge box of tricks that we bring to big group sessions that has really cool Legos in it, everything from animals to sharks to all sorts of fun. So, but all that is possible. So really the sky is the limit. It's just based on goals. Anything to add there, Allison, before I go to the next one?
Yeah, no, just wanted to mention it is fully customizable and flexible. So
Cool. All right. So what you've experienced today, simplified version of a powerful method. We'd love to ideate with folks to kind of see how this can be applied, but very curious to see kind of what you think about this method now that you've actually seen how you can put your thought and your emotions and your kind of unconscious thought into these builds. If you have any questions, we do have a few minutes to take Q&A. And we would love your feedback. So you will get a couple of questions in the post-webinar email that will come out. And if you email back, we do have a Lego set to give away. So we'd love to enter you in that drawing. But any questions? I lost my Q&A bar. Allison, what did I miss?
none in the chat just yet.
Okay, no worries. I know one that I get often is a whole day is really long. We can't get enough people together for a whole day. Is it still possible to do something? Yes. It's even still possible to do it in short bursts, an hour or two here or there over a couple of days, depending upon how big the problem is, right? Business problem, not necessarily that there's an issue, but business challenge, right? So we've had requests to do things like in offsites. So when you already have folks gathered, um, or when maybe there's a team meeting or things like that, tend to be good places to interject something like this for team building. But it doesn't have to be a huge time commitment.
Yeah, Trisha, one question. How do you typically introduce Lego Serious Play to teams that might be hesitant or unsure about using Lego in a business setting?
Mm, that's a great one. I think just being candid about it at first and almost like humble might not be the right word, but almost more just like not trying to oversell it at the start. So, of course, obviously, the person who's bringing it into the organization has to believe that's a different conversation. But we did a large session with a team of about 30 at a company here in Atlanta. And most of them didn't even really know what it was coming in. And we just kind of like introduced the idea, told them why we're doing it. And once we started, that's when you get the buy-in. So I would say just don't try to oversell it at the beginning. Let the Legos speak for themselves.
Mhm.
And by the time we got to the end of that session, it was an innovation focused one, but they were all bought in. So that tends to be just let the Legos speak for themselves, the best way.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got another question in the chat. What's an example of a time where this methodology helped overcome a team barrier?
Ooh. Great one. So of the team sessions, I think the most common outcome has been alignment. Now, the degrees of where those teams were in terms of misalignment, I wouldn't say I at least or us at KS&R have ever applied this in, say like conflict resolution
Hmm.
type problems, but a new team, a new team coming together who really doesn't know each other personally or have a sense of the team dynamic or where everybody is heading. We have definitely seen that as an outcome. Just stronger team dynamics quicker, especially a team that's fully remote, but you're able to get them together and you can build culture faster through a method like this than you could if you just had kind of a traditional kind of talk session.
Yeah, I would agree. I think one of the things that I walked away with from our meeting where it was a mixed group of us, some people that have known each other for 10 years, others that have known each other for just a few months, that team building aspect really came forward in terms of what people prioritized or the way that people work or even the way that people thought about work. So not necessarily a barrier that it helped us overcome, but just helped us get to know each other and our working styles and our personalities a lot easier and a lot quicker.
That's right. Oh, so a great question about probes. This is different. So we probably have a bunch of researchers, in the chat. This is very different probing than probably we're used to in our traditional qualitative. You want to go deeper and you want that second and third sentence, but it's more about you ask about the bricks versus asking about the why the person thought that. You're not asking about their feelings, you're asking about their choices. So it's almost more, I don't know, Allison, how you'd say, but like behavioral probing
Hmm.
in a way.
Yeah,
What would you add
absolutely.
to that?
Yeah, I think the way that I read this as well is people not as creative with building, right? So, and often in these sessions, if someone is not as used to or accustomed to Lego or creating with Lego, we do say let your hands do the thinking for you, right? Do not kind of turn your brain off, just start touching the bricks and let the creativity flow that way. And then once the build is created, we tend to say like ask questions of why did you use this color or why was there a specific reason that you used this piece? There are ways to definitely get to deeper insights when you direct the idea or the model onto the build itself versus the person.
Yep. Excellent. Well, I think we are at time. You are more than welcome in the chat there. So I will take my screen share down. But just wanted to say thank you to everyone spending some time with us today. Hopefully you learned something new. And if you have time to send us feedback, we'd love to hear it. We're always trying to get better ourselves at delivering this and helping extract value for our clients and partners. So appreciate it. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you, Trisha. Thank you, everybody else.
Excellent. All right. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.